A strange man moved into our house a week ago. My parents treat him like a god, and he's never said a single word. I don't know what to do. I'm writing this from a plastic chair in a hospital waiting room. It smells like bleach and quiet despair. My parents are in a room down the hall, in coma, and the doctors keep using words like unprecedented and unexplained. But I know what happened. I was there. I watched it happen. And the worst part, the part that is howling me out from the inside, is that I think I could have stopped it sooner. My life up until a week ago was normal, boring even. I'm 18, just finished the soul crushing marathon of high school final exams. My parents are good people, quite loving, a little old fashioned. My dad is an immigrant, came here with nothing, and has no family in this country. My mom was an orphan, raised in the system, so it's always just been the three of us, a small, tight knit, unremarkable little unit. After my last exam, I came home and crashed. I was so mentally and physically drained that I slept for nearly 24 hours straight. It was a deep, dreamless, black hole kind of sleep. When I finally woke up, it was the next morning. The sun was streaming through my window, and for the first time in months, I felt light. The weight of school was gone. I felt free. I went downstairs to the kitchen expecting to find my mom making coffee, the house smelling of toast and the comfortable quiet of a Saturday morning. My parents were there, but they weren't alone. Sitting at a small kitchen table in my chair was a man I had never seen before. He was maybe in his mid-30s. He had long, straight black hair that fell past his shoulders, a stark contrast to his pale skin. But his eyes were the first thing you noticed. They were a shocking, brilliant, jaundiced yellow, the color of a canary or a fresh bruise, and they were fixed on the bowl of cereal in front of him with an unnerving intensity. My parents looked up as I entered and they smiled, not their normal warm smiles. These were bright, brittle, and a little too white. Good morning, sleepyhead, my mom chirped, her voice a full octave higher than usual. Come join us. There's someone we want you to meet. I just stood there, dumbfounded. A million questions were swirling in my head, but none of them could find their way to my mouth. This is a relative of ours, my dad said, gesturing towards the man with a strange, almost reverent sweep of his hand. He's been out of the country for a very long time. He's going to be staying with us for a while. I finally found my voice. A relative. What relative? You don't have any relatives here. And Mom, you don't have any at all. The bright smiles on my parents' faces faltered for a fraction of a second, a flicker of something. Panic, annoyance passed through their eyes before the manic cheerfulness snapped back into place. Oh, a distant cousin, my mom said, waving a dismissive hand. From your father's side, it's a long story. We'll tell you all about it later. Now sit, have some breakfast, I said. The meal was the most uncomfortable, unnerving 20 minutes of my life. The man never spoke. He never looked up from his bowl. He ate with a slow, deliberate precision, lifting the spoon to his mouth and back down without a single wasted movement. My parents, however, never stopped talking. They kept up a frantic, one-sided stream of chatter directed at him, answering questions he never asked, laughing at jokes he never told. The weather is lovely today, isn't it? My mom said to him. You always did love the sun. We'll have to take you to the park later, my dad added, just like old times. It was like they were reading from a script or like they were hearing a conversation that I couldn't. It was insane. Later that day, when I got my dad alone, I pressed him. Dad, seriously, who is that guy? Where did he come from? My father's face went cold. The forced cheerfulness vanished, replaced by a stern, hard mask I hadn't seen since I was a little kid who had broken a rule. His name is not your concern, he said. his voice low and flat. He is our guest. You will treat him with respect. You will not ask any more questions. This is not up for discussion. And that was it. The conversation was over. The first few days were a masterclass in quiet, creeping dread. The man remained a silent, unnerving presence in our home. He never spoke a word. Not one. I tried. Once I found him alone in the living room, just standing in the center of the room, staring at a blank wall. Look, I said, my voice shaking slightly. I don't know who you are or what you're doing here, but this is my home and I never got to finish. My parents appeared in the doorway as if summoned from thin air. Don't be rude to our guest. My mother snapped, her voice sharp with the panic I didn't understand. He is family. Apologize. I just stared at them, then at the silent man with the yellow eyes, and I retreated to my room. The house started to feel less like my home and more like a temple dedicated to this silent, creepy stranger. The power dynamic shifted in ways that were both subtle and terrifying. At dinner, my mother would serve his plate first, and then we would all have to wait. We weren't allowed to take a single bite until he had finished his entire meal, which he always ate with the same slow, methodical pace. Only when his plate was clean were we permitted to eat our own, now cold food. Then we were forbidden from speaking to him directly. If you have something to say, you say it to us. My dad instructed, his face grim. We will relay the message. It was absurd. He was sitting right there, but I saw the look in my father's eyes. It was not a suggestion, it was a commandment. The worst part was the locked room. It was the spare bedroom upstairs, the one we used for storage. They cleared it out for him, and they started spending hours in there with him, the door locked from the inside. My mom would take him a tray of food, and then she and my dad would go in with him, and they wouldn't come out until long after dark. I couldn't stand it. The mystery was eating me alive. I had to know what was happening in there. Last night, I did something I probably shouldn't have. I waited until they were all in the room. I crept up the stairs, my heart a frantic drum against my ribs. The old house has old doors with old-fashioned keyholes. I knelt down, my hands trembling, and put my eye to the cold brass. The room was dark, lit only by a few dozen candles they had arranged on the floor. The air inside seemed to shimmer, and in the center of the room, he was standing. His posture was ramrod straight, like a statue, his head tilted back and his long, thin arms raised towards the ceiling. His fingers played. He was utterly unnaturally still. And my parents were on the floor in front of him, on their knees. They were prostrated before him, their bodies shaking, their heads bowed to the ground, and they were whispering, a low, rhythmic, frantic strum of gibberish, a language that wasn't language, a sound of pure, terrified devotion. They weren't hosting a relative, they were worshipping a god. I scrambled back from the door, a wave of nausea and terror washing over me. This was wrong. This was a sickness. My parents were in some kind of cult, and this man was the leader. They were in danger. I was in danger. I ran to my room, locked the door, and I called the police. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely dial the number. I whispered into the phone, telling the operator that there was a strange man in my house, that my parents were acting erratically, that I was scared for our safety. They said they would send a car over immediately. I hung up, a small sliver of relief cutting through my panic. Help was coming. Knock, knock. The soft, polite knock on my bedroom door made my blood turn to ice. I didn't move. I barely breathed. Knock, knock. I knew who it was. I had never heard him move through the house before. He was always just there, but I knew. I slowly, shakily stood up and opened the door. He was standing there, the man with the long black hair and the terrible yellow eyes. And for the very first time since he had arrived in my room, he was looking directly at me. And he was smiling. It was a wide, thin-lipped, maniacal grin, a grotesque slash of white on his pale face. It was a smile of pure, triumphant malice. All the fear, all the confusion of the past week erupted out of me in a single raw scream. Who are you? What have you done to them? Get out of my house. The police are coming for you. You hear me? They're coming. He didn't say a word. The horrible smile never wavered. He just held my gaze for a long, silent moment, and then he turned, as calmly as if he were going for a stroll, and walked down the stairs. I followed him, stumbling, my mind a blank roar of terror and rage. He walked to the front door, opened it, and stepped outside. He didn't run. He just walked down the quiet suburban street, his tall, thin figure silhouetted against the streetlights, until he turned a corner and was gone. I ran back upstairs, screaming for my parents. I found them on the floor of the spare bedroom, amidst the extinguished candles. They were lying on their sides, unconscious, their faces pale and slack. They were breathing, but it was shallow, faint. They wouldn't wake up. The police arrived a few minutes later. It is a blur of flashing lights, professional voices, and questions I couldn't properly answer. I told them everything. The man, his yellow eyes, the way my parents were acting, the room upstairs, him leaving just moments before they arrived. I gave them his description, every single detail pumped into my memory. An ambulance came and took my parents away. I stayed with two of the officers. They were sympathetic, I guess, but I could see the skepticism in their eyes. They told me they were going to check the home security footage. We had a small, simple system, just a few cameras covering the front and back doors. I sat at my kitchen table, my head in the hands, as one of the officers reviewed the footage on his laptop. After a few minutes of silence, he called his partner over. "Hey, check this out." I looked up. The officer turned the laptop towards me. The screen showed the footage from the front door camera from just a few minutes ago. I saw myself, a frantic, terrified figure, following something. I saw myself streaming at the empty doorway. I saw the front door open as if by a gust of wind and then close again. But the man, the strange man with the yellow eyes, he wasn't there. He wasn't in the footage at all. It just looked like I was having a complete psychotic breakdown, screaming at nothing. "There's no one there, son," the officer said gently. "The cameras didn't pick up anyone entering or leaving the house all night except for you." I was still staring at the screen, my mind refusing to accept it, when I heard the other officer's voice from the other room. He was on his phone, his voice low and urgent. Another one. Same as the others. The parents are catatonic. The kid is talking about a tall guy with yellow eyes. No, nothing on the cameras. Same as always. It's the fifth one this year. He trailed off as he saw me looking at him. The officer wouldn't tell me anything else, just that they would be investigating. So now I'm here, at the hospital. My parents are in deep coma. The doctors have run every test they can think of. They have no answers. Their brains just seem to have shut down. I know what happened. He was real. He was a predator. And my parents were his nest, or his food, or something I can't begin to comprehend. He trained them dry and then he moved on. And the officer's words, "The fifth one this year, he's still out there. He's doing this to other families." And I could have stopped it. I should have called the police the first day, the first hour, the moment I saw him sitting in my chair. But I waited. I was scared. I was confused, and now my parents are gone, maybe forever, and it's my fault. I failed them. I was the only one who could see the monster, and I did nothing until it was too late. My family doesn't have a graveyard. We have a pantry. My family doesn't age like other people. My grandmother was 98 when she passed, but she looked 65, maybe younger. My great uncle is 102 and still chops his own firewood. We've always credited it to good genes and our own sacred tradition, the renewal stew served at every major family gathering. It was a rich, dark, savory stew that made you feel warm from the inside out, full of life. When Grandma Rose died, I was the one who inherited the old family farmhouse. Tucked away in her study, I finally found it, the original handwritten recipe book. Bound in cracked leather, I felt a thrill, like I was finally being let in on the secret. I opened it to the page for the renewal stew. It was mostly blank. There were no ingredients listed for the stew itself, only two cryptic notes in my great-great-grandmother's spidery script. For the broth, see the cellar instructions. For the seasoning, see the attic instructions. The cellar was damp and smelled of earth. Behind the stack of old canning jars, I found a loose stone in the wall. Pulling it free revealed a dark, hidden chamber. Inside, arranged in neat rows were a dozen large, unglazed clay pots filled with a dark, peaty soil. A thick, pale, gnarled root snaked out of the soil in each pot, looking disturbingly like a human hand. A dusty journal sat on a small table. The entries dating back to the 1800s described the process. When a member of our family dies, they aren't buried or cremated. They are planted. Their bodies are prepared with a special mixture of herbs and laid to rest in these pots. Over the years, the soil and the body produces a live root. This root is harvested, boiled for 3 days, and becomes the broth for the renewal stew. I felt a wave of nausea. We weren't just eating stew. We were consuming the concentrated essence of our dead ancestors. Shaking, I went to the attic. In a locked trunk, I found a collection of small, ornate silver boxes, each engraved with the name of a living family member. I found my own, my name freshly engraved. Inside each box was a small, sharp obsidian knife. Another journal explained the final step, the seasoning. It wasn't a spice. At each gathering, every family member present must make a living contribution to the stew. A few drops of blood, a sliver of fingernail, a tear cried directly into the pot. This offering of the living is what awakens the ancestral broth. I slammed the book shut, my hands trembling. It was a grotesque, cannibalistic ritual. I vowed I would never participate. The next major gathering was for the autumn equinox. I made an excuse not to go, claiming I had the flu. I felt a sense of righteous defense. A week later, my mother called, her voice thin and weak. "Your Aunt Carol isn't well," she said. "She's had a sudden decline." I drove to my aunt's house. The woman who opened the door was a stranger. She looked 80 years old, her skin thin and translucent like parchment, her hair patchy and white. But it was Aunt Carol. She was only 58. She looked at me, her eyes wide with a desperate, hungry light. "You didn't come?" she rasped, her hand gripping my arm with surprising strength. Her fingernails were cracked and yellow. The stew, it wasn't strong enough. It's always weaker when someone is missing. I finally understood. We don't have good genes. We have a curse. A rapid, horrifying decay that is constantly trying to claim us. The stew isn't a fountain of youth. It's the only thing that holds the rot at bay. We aren't living long lives. We are desperately, grotesquely staving off an accelerated death. The winter solstice is next month. My mother called again yesterday. She told me my great uncle's hands are so stiff, he can no longer hold an axe. She told me she found a new gray hair and when she plucked it, a small patch of skin came with it. Then she asked if I would be coming home for the solstice. Her voice was casual, but the question hung in the air, heavy and raw. They need me. They need my contribution. I'm looking at the small silver box with my name on it. The little black knife sits inside, cold and sharp. I have a choice. I can go participate in the stomach churning ritual and feed the curse to keep my family looking young and vibrant, while I know the horrifying truth. Or I can stay here, clean and pure, and watch them all fall apart knowing that the same rot is flowing through my own veins, waiting for its turn. My baby sister is still crawling despite being 20 months old, and I know the reason why she can't walk. It's been 2 weeks since mom started to drag Claire to community programs. This was heavily influenced by Aunt Minnie's persistent chatter over the phone that mom's baby girl is disconnected with the universe and she needs guidance in order to find her anchor. I personally think it has nothing to do with any spiritual stuff that my aunt is crazy about, and my mom knows it well herself. Claire is fine in every other way. She can point out the differences between lions and tigers, happily shouting orange and tiger steps when I show her picture books. She is also curious and adventurous like any other kid her age. It didn't make sense that she will not try to walk. But Claire, healthy and happy, never even attempted to stand, even though she was talking just fine. Ever since Claire was 14 months old, Mom had tried to coax her into standing. She would sit in front of Claire, smile, and encourage her over and over again. Claire had only giggled and focused on the toy in her hand every time. As days flew by without any more progress, Mom tried the hospital and signed up for a program in the Child Development Center. It didn't work either. Saturday was another day at the spiritual community program for Claire. I had noticed Mom had bags under her eyes as she carried Claire to the car. Few days ago, Mom told me they were learning how to breathe at that program, and I can tell Mom was going to snap if this goes on without avail. I was looking at my phone when Mom called me. She asked me to check if the nursery's windows were open, since it was going to rain soon. I did what I was told and stood up from the couch. I could see the sky was already grey with clouds. Claire's room is upstairs, across from mine. I aimed at my bed, chucked my phone, and walked straight into the nursery. The windows were open. I didn't hesitate in closing them, and I was starting to get out when my feet got stuck in one of Claire's toys. I instinctively looked down, but soon I noticed something other than a stuffed crocodile on my foot. There were faint red-brown stains on the floor, not vivid enough to catch attention, but there when you knew to look. And they stretched across the room. The stains were in an odd shape. It was far from simple droplets you get from spilling something. No, it looked like something was dragged endlessly all around the nursery in a big circle. Maybe Claire had something on her knees while she was playing in a room. But the drag was a perfect circle, and I was sure Mom wouldn't let Claire play with spoiled clothes. I decided to let Mom know when she came back. I was just turning around when I heard a crash in my room. I froze. The cause of the sound was none other than my phone. It was on the floor. Maybe it landed wrong and slipped from my bed. I was pretty sure it fell on the middle of the bed though. The house seemed a lot bigger, the hallway taller as I stepped into my room. I picked up my phone, my mind replaying the strange stains. From downstairs, I heard Mom calling that she was back. The rain had started falling just a few minutes after I closed the window. I rushed out to pass Mom an umbrella. She was annoyed about today's session, and I forgot about the stains. I only remembered it in the evening when I was playing with Claire. Claire had a princess doll in her feast and she moved it across the air. But then, as if she was struck, she made a face before gently rolling the doll to the ground. I watched as Claire dragged the doll on the ground, her face furrowed in concentration. The cotton doll was now sprawled on its hands and knees, like Claire. Like me. Claire declared to the doll. 1, 2, 3. Good. Claire, I asked, amused, why is the princess crawling? Claire stared at me with wide eyes, her mouth half open. Then she crossed her arms with a pout. 1, 2, 3. Good. But she has feet, I pointed out. I reached for the poor doll, whose yarn hair was now dusty, and made her stand on my knee. See, she can stand. I pulled the doll away from Claire's reach and started to make it take little steps. And she can walk. No, like me. Claire's cheeks were getting wetter and I realized I made a mistake. Too late. She burst into tears and Mom rushed into the living room, scooping up Claire in her arms while shooting me a look. Mom, there are stains on the nursery floor, I informed her, leaning against the sofa. If Claire drags her dolls on the grounds like this, all of her toys will be covered in them soon. Mom frowned and nodded, her hands still supporting Claire. I'll clean it up later, she said, setting Claire on the couch. In the meantime, you can finish your course. I wanted to say something more, but Mom's tired eyes stopped. After dinner, Claire played quickly on the living room rug. A frog doll had joined the princess doll. I tried to push the memory of the stains aside, trying not to notice as Claire made the dolls crawl and stumble over the carpet. 1, 2, 3. Good. She chanted, voice light but rhythmic. Something about it made my chest tighten. I told myself she was just repeating what she had learned, a harmless mimicry. But the pattern in her voice felt deliberate, as if she was teaching the dolls. Few days later, I woke up in the middle of the night. I had to use the bathroom. I was heading right when I noticed the nursery door open. In the darkness, the toys littered on the floor were visible, but the door blocked me from seeing her bed. Voices were coming from the room, inaudible from where I was standing, but I could hear it was not one, but two. Was it Mom? Even though I gave myself the most logical answer, I knew better. It can't be Mom. Mom won't talk to Claire in the middle of the night. I couldn't even swallow as I took a step, then another. The voices didn't stop. My feet stilled just a few feet away from entering the room. That's when I was able to see it. Claire was awake on the floor and her hands and knees crawling. And beside her was a shape larger than Claire, its back hunched and head ducked in an uncomfortable angle. It had long, scraggly hair that looked damp, touching the floor. Together they moved their left hands forward. Then they tucked themselves forward. 1, right hand forward. 2, the thing purred. And I saw the truth. Claire doesn't walk because the thing that taught her how to move never had feet.